Tribute to my greatest D&D companion of all time. This story is a tribute to my best friend James. He was the one that got me into D&D, and was the driving force for me to start DMing and building the world that we would spend countless hours in. Unfortunately, he passed away suddenly, and it has taken me quite a while to put my thoughts together, and I'm writing this in hopes that it will help. Even if it doesn't, I wanted to tell everyone what an awesome person James was, and about his character Sam Spryfoot, the halfling adventurer, historian, and all-around good dude. James loved history and mythology. I can't remember a time that he didn't try to teach me about something he had read. That same love of history and mythology was shared by Sam Spryfoot. So my challenge as a DM was to come up with a world full of compelling history for Sam and the party to discover and learn about. That challenge became the foundation for my campaign setting. The party consisted of 4 players and myself as DM, but all of this story is going to focus on Sam. I love doing one-on-one sessions with my players to establish their place in the world, and as you get older, schedules get harder to work around. James was always available to play, so we ended up running multiple sessions per week. So begins the adventures of Sam Spryfoot. Sam's background was relatively simple. There was no tragedy that set him on a path for vengeance, or a redemption arc that would nullify his past atrocities. Sam was a young halfling that wanted to see the world. His father was a merchant that returned home with stories of faraway lands, mythical creatures, and treasures lost to time. Those stories consumed Sam. He dreamed of exploring forgotten tombs, mapping unknown lands, and most importantly, preserving the history of this world. Sam wasn't motivated by becoming wealthy by pilfering lost treasures. He wanted to start a museum. People needed to see and touch their history. When Sam came of age, he told his parents his plan. They gave him a few coins to help him, and with a tearful goodbye, they watched their son walk into a world of infinite possibilities. His first adventure was navigating the bustling streets of Arbor, the largest city he had ever been in. Hundreds of people of all races called Arbor home. Mercenaries and adventurers traveled through the city constantly looking for work, a drink, and a place to sleep. Sam found himself in a small inn sipping a tankard of ale and taking in the sights and sounds of everything around him. Men in dirt-stained jinkins, dented armor, and grime-covered faces regaled one another of the adventure they had just returned from. Some displayed the treasures they had recovered from a slain monster or a magical item that had been discovered in a temple that had no name. Sam's eyes grew wide. His heart thundered in his chest. This is what he wanted. 2 men sat at the table behind Sam and spoke in hushed, conspiratorial voices. "Aye, it's authentic. You've got me word." A gruff, barely audible voice reassured the other man. "If it isn't, I'll have a lot more than your word," the other man threatened. "No need for that. Your treasure's here for the taking. That is, if you can survive long enough." He barked out a phlegmy laugh. The other man snorted derisively and dropped a sack of coins that thudded heavily against the wooden table. I hadn't planned on this being much more than a random conversation at an inn to get something going, but that conversation, and a few great rolls from James, started more than I could have ever imagined. James rolled a nat 20 to sneak up and peek around the arm of the man selling the map. He got a good long look, and rolled a 19 to try to memorize the location of the treasure. With the location fixed inside of Sam's mind, the race to the treasure was on. Sam's small feet, fueled by adrenaline and adventure, sped down a small road. His eyes darted ahead, looking for a small walking trail that would lead him through the dense jungle, to a step pyramid hidden somewhere in the jungle. We were doing an Aztec-inspired setting. I think treasure hunting. I think Aztec. I digress. With a stellar perception roll, Sam found the hidden path, and trudged forward through the dense undergrowth. Because of his initial success on finding the path, I gave him a head start into the jungle ahead of our antagonist. But Sam's luck began to fail him once inside the jungle. He got turned around and ended up traveling in a circle. Sweat ran down Sam's back, staining his cotton shirt. He leaned against a tree to collect his thoughts, and sip from his water bladder. He failed to hear the quiet slithering of scales against the tree bark directly above him. The python wrapped its muscular body around Sam and the tree and began to constrict. His bones creaked against the pressure. His muscles flexed in a vain attempt to break free of the serpent's deadly embrace. Bloodless fingers fumbled against the hilt of his dagger. They felt like bloated, numb sausages. With a surge, he slipped his arm free and unsheathed his blade. He plunged the dagger into the snake, which recoiled in pain, releasing Sam. He gasped humid jungle air into his burning lungs. The words of the man in the bar echoed in his mind. "If you can survive long enough." Bruised but not discouraged, Sam stared into the dense jungle and marched forward. With a bit of luck and me not wanting Sam to die in our first session, he broke free of the jungle into a large clearing, with a massive stone step pyramid sitting squarely in the middle. Cautiously, he explored the exterior of the pyramid and found a rubble-strewn doorway. After a bit of clearing, he made a hole just large enough for a halfling to slip through. No reason making it any bigger for anyone larger to follow behind, without a little bit of work on their part. Decades of old dust assaulted his nose as he landed in a large, empty stone hallway. The beam of light from the hole above barely illuminated the interior of the pyramid. He fished into his small backpack for a torch, lit it, and got to work. His booted feet whispered over the ancient stone floor. The torch cast its flickering light, pushing back the shadows. A metallic glint shone briefly in the torchlight. Sam pushed the torch forward nervously and inched his way forward. From the gloom, a figure began to take shape. Sam's eyes went wide as the skeleton and a dented cuirass came into light. In the center of the skeleton's chest, pierced through the armor, was a large spear, as thick as Sam's arm. It wouldn't be a hidden pyramid without a few traps, Sam thought. He was right. I don't care if it's cliché, it's fun. After a few minutes of examining every surface of the hallway, Sam determined that some of the floor tiles were pressure plates, and one wrong step would see him impaled like a halfling shish kebab. A few nimble hops, a pirouette, a successful acrobatics check, and Sam had conquered the first trap. Easy. Sam took some time to investigate the interior of the pyramid. Ancient art decorated the length of the stone walls. Depictions of people worshipping a winged lizard creature were a prominent theme. Foreshadowing? Maybe. A large circular stone door blocked the way ahead. Small stone slabs with glyphs carved into them created a circular border around the door. Carved intricate into the center was the face of a lizard, with a stone tongue, lashing out of an open, fanged mouth. The mouth was large enough to slide a hand into. Sam flexed his fingers and cautiously eased his hand toward the gaping, hungry-looking maw. His fingers brushed against the stone tongue, and he pulled his hand back. Laughing nervously to himself, he asked the stone door, "It's not like it could bite my hand off, right?" The door didn't answer Sam. He shook his hand, trying to cast off the nerves that gripped his body, and pushed his hand back toward the mouth. A whisper echoed through the vacant hallway. "Are you sure you want to do that?" Sam cursed and withdrew his hand again. But a thought struck him, and he spun on a heel and sprinted back down the hallway. He skidded to a halt in front of the impaled skeleton and ripped its arm off. It's not like he needed it anymore. Sam sped back to the door and fumbled with the skeletal hand and thrust it into the mouth. Nothing happened. He rattled the arm around a bit, hoping to trigger any traps. Again, nothing. What the hell? Sam tossed the arm down and jammed his hand into the mouth. Smooth, dusty stone greeted his searching fingers. "Oh, come on!" he shouted and slammed his hands against the door. Effortlessly, the door swung open. "I hate you," Sam growled to no one in particular. Cautiously, Sam stepped through the open door and into a massive chamber. His eyes could barely pierce the gloom, but a small sliver of sunlight shone through a crack in the ceiling, roughly 200 feet above his head. His torch began to sputter and flicker. He set it on the ground at his feet, rummaged through his bag and got his final torch out. He lit the new torch with the old and held it as high as he could, hoping the dim light would push the darkness further away. The air smelled of rot, dust, and a musky smell that permeated the room. Sam moved forward silently, balanced on the balls of his feet. He was making progress when the toe of his boot kicked something. The gold bowl bounced over the stone floor and spun on its rim. The clattering intensified as the bowl rotated rapidly on its rim, before finally coming to rest with what felt like a deafening shing. Crap! "Who dares enter my temple?" a thunderous voice roared from the darkness. Sam threw the torch as far as he could and fell prone to the floor, pressing himself against the cold stones. The sound of wings flapping in the darkness made Sam's heart sink. "It has been so terribly long since I've eaten. Show yourself." The voice was closer now and higher. "Fine," the creature hissed. It barked a command in a language unknown to Sam. The temple understood, though. The sliver of light peeking through the ceiling began to grow, as stone grayed against stone. Dust cascaded from the roof as the beam of light widened slowly. Sam, now able to see more of his surroundings, realized he was laying in the middle of a treasure hoard, except he had managed to find the one spot without any conceivable cover. Critically failing stealth checks is a bummer. The beam of light struck a mirror that shot it across the temple chambers into another mirror, then another and another. The chamber was illuminated as if the noonday sun was inside the chamber itself. "There you are." Sam's eyes inched skyward to the flying serpent. Crap. Well, the gig was up. Sam slowly rose and dusted the front of his shirt off. The serpent made a disappointed clicking sound with its forked tongue.
All this time waiting, and this is what I get. A snack, a morsel, a crumb. They used to throw entire herds of deer to satiate my endless hunger.
The serpent let out a melancholy sigh that was more hiss than anything.
I guess we both know what comes next.
Of course, you're gonna ask me riddles, Sam said confidently.
What?
The serpent asked, tilting its head in confusion. It's obvious, I must answer your riddles, and if I do, you must allow me to walk out of your temple. The walls of the temple shook, as the serpent's laughter echoed throughout the chamber.
Riddles? Riddles?
It boomed. Sam nodded and crossed his arms across his chest.
Riddles are preposterous. They're a terrible dungeon mechanic. Riddles do nothing but test the player's knowledge and not the characters. I can't believe you thought that I would have a riddle for you. The answer is time or a river or man.
The serpent, me, ranted for quite a bit longer, but I'll spare you the bulk of it. At the end of the serpent's diatribe against using riddles in dungeons, it looked back down to finish off his meal, only to find that Sam was nowhere to be found. Sam was slinking around a large pile of gold almost back to the door that led him into the chamber when something curious caught his eye. In the sea of glittering gold, gems, and treasure was a brown leather hat and jacket. He gingerly placed the hat on his head, and it was as if it were made custom for him. The jacket went on immediately, and it was the same story. Light enough to keep him cool, but heavy enough to keep him warm. Sam didn't have a mirror, but he didn't need one. He knew he looked dapper as hell. Warm breath pricked up the hairs on his neck. Gotcha! The serpent's fangs narrowly missed as Sam rolled away. He didn't care about any of the other treasures. His eyes were fixed on the doorway just ahead. Snapping jaws were right on Sam's heels. He threw himself forward into the doorway, and the serpent collided heavily against the stone. Breathing heavily, Sam apologized for the inconvenience and tactfully retreated from the temple. He found his way back to the entrance of the temple, and just in time to see a familiar face burst from the jungle. The man from the tavern that had purchased the map. Sam, being stuck in between the temple and the jungle, didn't have anywhere to hide or go, so he decided bluffing was his best bet. He straightened his jacket and marched forward as if nothing was awry, and he was simply out for a stroll in the jungle. "Afternoon, my good man," Sam said and tipped his hat to the gentleman. The question on the man's lips died to the deafening roar coming from the temple. Sam swallowed hard and didn't break his stride. The serpent shot through the opening in the temple's roof. It briefly blotted out the sun as it flew above the temple, its eyes searching for Sam. That was a good enough distraction, Sam decided, and he burst into a run. The other man's eyes shot from the serpent to Sam's back, and he sprinted after Sam. "You idiot!" Sam could barely hear the deluge of swearing from the man chasing him due to the large fern-like leaves smacking him in the face. With one hand holding the hat firmly onto his head, and the other attempting to bat away leaves, Sam made great time through the jungle. Being shorter than most of the tangling vines gave him a leg up on the man chasing after. Sam stumbled out of the jungle into a clearing he recognized. This was exactly where he started his journey, except now there was a horse standing there looking at him with a vacant expression. "Don't mind if I do." Sam untied the horse and leapt onto its back. He drove his heels into the horse's flanks and tore off down the narrow path. "You'll pay for this! I, Guy Devereaux, swear vengeance!" If Guy had shouted anything else, Sam couldn't hear it. This was the kind of adventure that he had dreamed of. This was why he left home. Nothing could wipe the grin off of Sam's face as he sped through the jungle on his stolen horse in his new hat and jacket. When we introduced Sam to the party, he was immediately dubbed Mini Indiana Jones, or Mini Indy. It suited Sam just fine. This is how it went for Sam. His fame as a treasure hunter for good began to spread far and wide. When he wasn't with the party, he was taking jobs seeking out lost antiquities. And his arch-rival Guy Devereaux was always close at hand, trying to beat Sam to the prize. Their rivalry evolved quickly into a competition of mutual respect. They both loved the hunt and the challenge, and when one beat the other, it was agreed that violence wasn't necessary. After all, if one of them died, the contest would end, and neither wanted that. The number of ruins, temples, and adventures that Sam went on is too many to even recall. They would fill a book of their own. He once convinced a dragon to get a job at a bank to protect the bank's gold, and to get a weekly stipend for protecting it, thus increasing his own hoard. He got a dragon a job. He made friends, enemies, was sweet on a girl, and generally lived his life to the fullest. He returned to his home a few times over the years, but he couldn't lead the simple life of a merchant. So he bought the business from his dad so he could retire, and contracted out the cart. As the years passed, Sam built a museum for all the pieces he had recovered. He spent less time on the road and more time curating his collection and teaching anyone who would listen about the history of each one. Unfortunately, after years of gaming together, this is when I suddenly lost my best friend James. He may not be here with us physically anymore, but James will always exist in my games as Sam. That brave, adventurous, and wonderful halfling that brought everyone so much joy will be handing out quests when we begin a new campaign. Thank you for everything, James. This is what makes D&D so special. Thank you. Tell us about your great companions in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, All Things D&D. Stay tuned for more amazing Dungeons & Dragons content.